Hey guys, this is AgentMindStorm, and welcome back to Cubes and Contemplations. I think we're going with an S on the end of that contemplation, but I mean, still up in the air, We're going with the name. I like the name. We're sticking with it. Welcome to the first real episode where we're not just going to be talking about what it is, we're actually going to be talking about a topic, and the topic today is criticism. Generally, I like to pick topics that I have experience with and have a lot to say about, so criticism seemed like something just perfect to talk about for our first episode because I got a lot, and my note sheet is like 2 sheets, not just one. So I think we should start this episode by saying, what is criticism? Let's define it. This is all what I think it is, by the way. All of this is my opinion. We should probably preface this. This is not a fact. This is not a dictionary definition. This is what I personally think. Criticism is basically any form of feedback that suggests something about your product or you or something you make. We're just going to use the blanket term product for that. Something about your product is not perfect. Something could be improved or changed or removed in some way, and that you should make those changes is what the criticism is saying. Now, here's an example. Your hair is ugly. Now, that is a very bad form of criticism, which we will talk about more later in the video, but that is an example of criticism. You're criticizing someone's hair. Is it a fair criticism? I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about later. And then here's another more friendly example. You should be more concise about your points, Agent Mindstorm. That is an example, and I'm sure that someone's going to think that at some point, but this is the form of this series. That's how it is, but let's not get off topic. So the next thing we should probably talk about, now that we know what criticism is, it's any time that someone's giving feedback on a product. Why should you take criticism, or why should you give criticism? So basically, criticism is, in my opinion, always, forever necessary on some level. Criticism is a way that you can improve yourself or your product based on the opinions of the target being the person who either wants your product or someone you're interacting with or something. And if you can improve your product in a way that the other person, the target, will enjoy it more, be it yourself, be it anything. It could literally be anything that you're doing that someone else criticized. It's feedback directly from that target. You want to listen to that. That's why criticism is so important. And you also have to remember that no one is perfect, and criticism can be applied to pretty much anyone ever and anything. So never feel like you're off of the criticism hook, because you're always on it. It also offers, as I said before, a way to improve yourself most of the time, which, once again, we're getting into that later. So we've defined criticism, we've explained why criticism is important, but now let's talk about giving criticism. You're the criticizer. The person saying your product should be improved so it can better reach its target. I know that it sounds like I'm some horrible corporate person, but these are just the words I picked to be stand-ins for thing you're improving, things being criticized, person being criticized, I just had to pick a word, so product's what I picked. The thing about giving criticism that has always bugged me is people always say, give constructive criticism. And that is a blanket term for so much that people don't go into, and I think we need to talk about that more. Constructive criticism is an important concept, but it's not everything, because even though it encompasses a lot of things, just saying constructive criticism doesn't get that idea across. So let's dig a little deeper into this. When you give criticism, it should come from a place of wishing to improve something or someone. You want this other person's product to be better suited for you or for someone else or for something else, so you tell them how they should improve it. That is the key concept of criticism, and if you are criticizing something that you either don't care about, don't have a connection to, or doesn't affect you in any way, it's probably not worth it. So generally, you should be wanting to improve something. And the other thing you should keep in mind is that if your criticism is only angrily commenting on the state of something, ooh, the servers are broken is one that you see all the time on social media, for example. That's not useful criticism. I mean, sure, it's like informing, oh, your servers are broken, but do you think they haven't heard that 1,000 times already? They know. They know the servers aren't working. So a good way to ensure that you're actually making sure that there's an improvement and trying to improve and helping with that is building off of something objective. This is a way to ensure that even if the person you're criticizing disagrees, they can still understand why you hold that opinion. You basically build off something that anyone can tell is true. For example, there is a long time between pressing a button and executing the action in your game. Your game would be more fun if there were less time between pressing the button and executing the action. The first sentence is something objective. Anyone can tell. You press the button, it takes a second, and then the thing happens. That is an objective fact. No one can argue with that. So once you've built down that foundation of objective fact, that's when you build your criticism off of it. You say, I think it would be more fun if pressing the button made the action happen instantly instead of taking a second. Now, it doesn't mean you have to take that criticism, but you have built your criticism off of an objective fact. Another thing that constructive criticism technically covers, but you never really hear, is that blunt criticism is not received well. If you were to say, your music is bad, it's slow and repetitive, that is blunt criticism. You are telling them exactly what the problem is, and maybe that's helpful for some people, but for the majority of people, they will not react positively to that. They will see you as attacking them and not try to fix anything. When you give someone criticism, you should, and this is a term I've come up with, I say soften the blow. You have to use nicer words, and you have to more explain why you are saying this. So for example, let's take that same thing about your music is bad, it's slow and repetitive. Let's clean that up, let's soften it. And I came up with, these are all examples I've written down, by the way. Your music needs work. I find it slow and repetitive, so I think increasing the tempo and adding more variety between measures would help it sound better. That's very simple. You framed it. It's the exact same criticism. I still mentioned that I think it's too slow. I still mentioned that I think it's repetitive. And I still mentioned that it's not as good as it could be. But I didn't say it so bluntly. And if you were to say that to a person, they would probably be so much more likely to take your criticism to heart and actually change their music. That is something so important when taking criticism. And there's a lot of people who like to disregard that completely and just say, no, you need to be able to take everything as bluntly as possible. But we're not robots. We don't do that exactly. So when you're criticizing someone, make sure to soften the blow at least a little. Another thing that's important to remember when giving criticism is when you're giving it. It needs to match the situation. If you're delivering good criticism, but it's at a terrible time, it will only make the situation worse. So here's an example. Let's say this is some criticism I'm giving someone. I've softened the criticism already. Your room is not very clean. You should vacuum the floors and dust the tables so it will be more welcoming to guests. That's softened criticism, and maybe if you told someone that while they're doing just doing nothing, playing games, then sure, they would take that. They might go and clean up their room and dust some tables, and it'll be so much better for everyone. But if you tell them that while they're stressing about the exam tomorrow at 10 o'clock at night, they are not going to take that criticism well. So you really have to think about when are you telling this person criticism and how are you telling it to them. That is basically the base, and make sure you're doing it as nicely as possible in a way that is constructive, even though I hate using that term. Even more difficult than giving criticism, almost everyone has given criticism, let's be honest, you've probably always criticized something, but harder than that is taking criticism, examining what someone has told you about how you should improve your product, and actually going and doing it. This is a very hard thing to do. It's something that I'm constantly working on, but I still always need work, and pretty much everyone can benefit from taking criticism. In the past, for example, for me, out of pride, I would ignore criticism, or out of tradition. Like, for a long time, I didn't want to change the format of my Let's Play. I know I said I wouldn't talk about me, but this is an example. I didn't want to change the format of my Let's Play at all, because I liked how it was, and it had been that way for over 100 episodes. But now I'm realizing as soon as I took that criticism and I changed it, now the episodes are so much better, they're more concise, and people actually like it more. It's easier to make, too. It's positive in every way, but I was held back by my own pride and my belief that the way I was doing it was better. Based on that, I imagine a lot of people are in the same place as that. They aren't taking criticism that they're receiving. First and foremost, when you're getting criticized, you have to understand, it's difficult to do, but you have to remove yourself from the situation and remember that criticism will ultimately improve you. If someone is displeased by your product, Your immediate response should not be, that you're wrong, here's 100 reasons why. No, your response should be to say, okay, and then walk away, and then you evaluate that criticism. Now, the easiest way to do this is to say the question, why am I being criticized? And not as in, why am I being criticized? Say, why am I being criticized? This is by far the most important part of when you take criticism. Once you've swallowed that pride, you have to evaluate the criticism and actually realize, is it something that is improving me? Will this make me better? Or is this just another dumb suggestion? Now, that's really blunt. Criticism is not always good. And I might have made it sound that way so far, but criticism is very rarely incredibly helpful. Like, if you go into the comments, let's use an example here. Go to IGN and go to any of their comment sections. It is a dumpster fire. It is all a dumpster fire. IGN, they're doing their thing, whatever. They're making loads of money. And these people are constantly criticizing. But for the business people there, who cares about the criticism because they're making the money? They've evaluated that the comments that are hating on them are not necessary to act upon. An easy way to tell if your criticism is valid or not is, has there been a recent pushback by some sub-community or community that blanket declares something as bad? This is similar to cancel culture, I'd say. Has there been something that is quote-unquote canceling something you've done in your product? And most of the time, this is reactionary and criticism that will literally be gone in a few days. So you generally don't need to worry about that kind of criticism. There's also, is the criticism coming towards you being presented in a way that reveals high levels of anger behind it? Anger, and they just hate you, and they don't want any productivity, and they want you to burn. That is not productive criticism. If it's not suggesting any ways to improve, or even telling you what's wrong, if it's just hateful, that is not good criticism. If you only say negative things about a product, you're not helping, you're not criticizing anything because we don't know what you're criticizing. So once your criticism has been evaluated as valid, you should not just crumple over and say, well, my thing is imperfect. There's some people who take this a lot of ways. Either you can say, oh, my thing is imperfect, it's garbage, I'm gonna scrap it, I'm gonna start over, I need to get rid of this. And then there's people who will say, oh, it's imperfect, but, that's fine. I didn't really want it to be perfect, so I'm okay with that. But that is not the best mindset you could be in. The criticism has suggested a way for you to improve. It's given you a starting point, somewhere you can jump off of and actually make changes based off. You have this person's opinion, hopefully built on something objective, that you can go and tweak. Doesn't matter what that is, if it's your attitude or the enemy placements in your video game, who cares what it is. If it's criticism and you can change something about it, then you want to see, once you evaluate it as valid, you gotta see like, okay, I can make this change. I can make this thing better for my target. And that is a great thing. You should not be crumbled over in despair once you've taken criticism, because you need to understand, once again, criticism is only making you better. Its whole goal is to improve you or your product, or maybe probably both. So you've taken the criticism to heart. Your new goal is to go out there and seize it. Whatever you're going to do, you gotta go out there and you gotta do it. The last thing about criticism, once you've taken your criticism and you've acted on it and you've actually changed something, show the people who criticized your product before. Show them how it's changed. Compare it. And then see what they think of it now. Because positive feedback from the person who was previously criticizing your product is great. And it will make you feel so much better because you'll know that what you were doing was worth it. And then if you go back and the response is negative, maybe you can tweak it further. Maybe you'll decide that their things are invalid. You gotta show it to the people who criticized it to see if it's fixed the problems. This also applies to the person who was criticizing before. You should, if someone has gone and made the changes that you suggested, you should be positive about that. That's a great thing. They did exactly what you wanted. They are not some weak-willed person because they crumbled to your superior intellect. This is the same sort of thing as, oh, I won the argument, but you don't try to win an argument. You want to go into an argument because you're going to learn more about the other opinion. You don't want to win an argument, just like you don't want to beat someone whose product you criticized. You don't want to beat them, you want the product to improve. So once someone has gone back and fixed the thing that was previously not up to your standard, and they've taken your criticism, you gotta be positive about that. You want to be positive because they are super happy. They did their well, okay, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but like, they're ready to hear your thoughts on it. And you should probably be positive if it's been tweaked in a way that went along with your previous criticism. That's a good thing. You want that. That's incredible. That means that that person took your criticism, acted upon it, did everything correctly, and that means your original criticism was probably well presented. That's all a good thing. I think I'm going to end this video by giving you all a request. Please, 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 when you're criticizing something, don't be hateful. This is the simplest, fastest way to getting something recognized and getting something changed. Criticizing with hatred is not going to get you anywhere. But for now, I do want to tell you all, thanks for watching, and I will see you later.